Welcome back to the Sapphic Gaze podcast. I am your host, Nisa, and as always, my co-host and partner, but not in a gay way, Ellie, is joining me for our talk today on masculine pairing and representation within Sapphic literature. Ellie, how's it going?
Oh, good. How are you?
Oh, I'm just hanging in there, you know?
It's been a rough day.
It has been a rough day. I'm a little tired, you know?
What time is it for you? Because there's 6 hours difference, isn't there, for us?
Yes, so it's 1:14 here.
In the afternoon. Oh yeah, obviously not in the morning. I doubt you'd be recording at 1 a.m.
I mean, I could, but no, I am not. I'm recording at 1 a.m, so.
It's 7:14 p.m. here.
Yes, that would be a 6-hour time difference.
Wow, the sass. You're getting ready for the masc debates.
It's not even a debate. It's just a sad situation. So kind of to preface this podcast episode, as discussed previously, I am a Redditor, and I do follow a lot of Sapphic literature Reddits and subreddits. And so kind of the whole idea on this one was that I had seen somebody asking if there were any recommendations that the group had for masculine or butch representation as far as books are concerned. And there were like no responses on this subreddit. One person did share a list that they had found that listed a whole bunch of different Sapphic novels that this person had read. And on that list of them, only 13 out of 250 were butch or masculine pairings. And so I kind of started to wonder, like, why that is. So I dove deep and read a bunch of those, and I'm going to say they all have some good points to them, but by and large, from what I found, is there's not a really good subsection of really solid butch representation. A lot of the books that I found were novellas, so not even full stories. And then on top of that also is a lot of them could have really used, I hate to say like an editor, but a lot of them were problematic in the way that they dealt with women, and they really leaned into that heavy toxic masculinity. And so I thought maybe we could chat a little bit about that.
Let's do it. How many did you read in your quest for research?
So out of the 13, I read 7. 3 of them were well, no, 4 of them were novellas, and I really only enjoyed one of them. I did find one, again, novella, but it wasn't on the list, but it was one that I had found exterior to that list. But overall, they were all just kind of problematic, or really didn't strike that same chord that I think we see as Sapphic readers within like the romance genre of femme or even butch femme. I don't know. It was really interesting to think about it and kind of read into it and try and figure out what's going on there, you know.
I was saying I think 148 Sapphic books I read last year, not a single one of them were masc or butch. And it's not because, it's not my preference or anything. Like, if there's a good book that has good recommendations, I'll read it, whatever the tropes are or the pairings. And I think the only one I'd heard of was Shattered by Lee Winter.
Yeah, and that one isn't even a straightforward romance. Not in the sense that, like, when you think of somebody like Hallie Cass, who has so many great, like, Sapphic romances, this wasn't a romance book. You could almost argue it was a superhero book, or maybe borders a little bit on fantasy. But the crux of that one is in a world where aliens have crash landed on our planet, they have certain powers. And now it's kind of like how the world sees the superhero's place or the alien's place in our, like, on our planet and our society, and how it kind of copes. And in that, one of our main characters is obviously one of the aliens, and the other is she's part of like a secret organization that manages the superhero or aliens, as it were. And so her job is to go after the ones who drop out of like communication with this organization that manages them. So it has to do a lot too with free will and honestly, it has a lot of subtext about like slavery because they are viewed as commodities and property. And when they go on the run, people come after them because they're not allowed to like exit out of our society. So, if anything, I'd say the big commentary in that one is a lot about free will and slavery and not so much on the romance. It's like the romance is an aside that kind of happens.
So we wouldn't necessarily class it as a masc romance pairing.
Not really. I mean, they do end up engaging in a romantic relationship, but with that pairing, I'm going to throw it out there that actually this comes to, and if anybody doesn't want the spoiler, now's the time to stop. This comes to another bone that I have to pick with it, is that they don't end up together. And that would have been fine if the reason that they didn't end up together is these aliens are basically immortal on our planet. Like, they have way longer lifespans than us. So, you know, being a human and trying to end up with this alien, questionable whether or not that's going to work out. But the alien does end up with a human, and it's a feminine character. And the hunter also ends up with a love interest who is, again, femme. And that brings me to this bigger question of why is it we in the Sapphic romance or even Sapphic literature genre are afraid to put two masculine characters or two butch characters together as like the end game.
It's not the fact that they're not as common, because they're just not written about as much.
Exactly. And, you know, kind of thinking about it, it does bring up a little bit of a question of like stigma within our own community, because I see butch femme pairings just romantically within our community, and it kind of brings up the larger question of like how much is our community almost trying to mirror the societal pressures that were kind of shown. Like, how much are we trying to live into the heteronormative idea that, you know, a woman should be with a man? It's kind of interesting to see that.
Yeah, I mean, you said you would only recommend one of them out of the 7?
Yeah, I would, and I'm going to throw it out there because honestly, it was the cutest fucking thing. But novella, not actually a full-blown book. Honestly, if I would have found it on a fan fiction website, I would have said it was a one-shot because it all takes place in the course of a day, and it's really just like a vignette when you start to think about it as far as like the narrative goes. I believe it's called Wherever Is Your Heart. Wherever Is Your Heart. It's part of, I guess, a universe, a literary universe. It's book 3 in a Moonlighters universe, but it's by Anita Kelly. And honestly, it's a super cute story. I'll be real. I want more of that masc representation. It's so fluffy. So our main characters, one is a long haul truck driver, which how gay is that? Like, if we're going into stereotypes.
I feel like you just need to add the boots and the plaid.
She is wearing plaid, actually. Hold on. If you can see that.
Wow, on the front cover, she's literally wearing plaid.
On the front cover, yes. And then the other one is a bartender. And so every time this long haul trucker comes through, she stops in to talk to the bartender. And it's like, through this, they kind of build a friendship and are a little bit flirtatious. And so they both, unbeknownst to the other one, have fallen in love with the other character.
That's really sweet.
It's over the course of the night, like both of them trying to find a way to tell the other one. And then once they finally do tell the other one, it's like a cute first date is what this book is. And God, by the end of it, I wanted more because it was so fluffy and realistic. And they're both older. I think they're both in their 40s. And so it's really mature the way that they communicate with one another and like how they're thinking about their lives and how do they fit into each other's lives. And honestly, if that's like the kind of representation I would see, I would love to see more masc representation. But it was probably the only one that I would really, truly recommend.
What about, it might not be masc. Is Stud Like Her? Is that masc?
Oh yeah, we did bring up Stud Like Her previously. So that one was masc, and specifically stud. So if you're not familiar with terminology, or if any of the readers aren't, I believe stud was something that was started as a classification for Black women who are more masculine. So it deals a lot with stud culture within the Black community. And so I would still say it's a good book. I really enjoyed their relationship and some of the themes. I think with that book, I don't know if it is the narrative itself or potentially me not understanding stud culture, but there was a lot of toxic masculinity. I couldn't get behind some of the writing style. You know how I am as an editor. I desperately wanted to edit the book as I was going through it, and that just might be my brain, but it does deal with a lot of toxic masculinity from kind of both of the main characters, and so I thought that was problematic too. And again, I leave room to say maybe I don't understand stud culture or the Black community. Maybe that is something that's underlying of something I don't understand. I'll leave that open, but overall, good book. I could recommend it. It might not be for everybody, though. But that one did bring out something that I wondered if it played into the reasons why we don't see more of that representation. It seemed like within that community, there was a heavy taboo around masculine women dating other masculine women, to the point where there was a situation where they were on a date and they overheard people saying, "What a waste of two studs."
Awful.
Yeah, like some feminine women were just saying, "What a waste." Like, why is that a waste? What are we seeing? Like,
Is that your experience of like lesbian culture in the US?
I'll admit, I didn't get super, like, me personally, I wasn't really into club culture or the lesbian community at large. I got lucky enough that not super early in my dating, but early into my dating as an adult. Basically, I met my wife at 22, and so meeting her at 22 really clipped where I had to kind of entrench myself in club culture or the lesbian dating community. But from what I've seen and kind of talking to some of my friends who are a little bit more masculine, they said that it does seem like they encounter a lot of femme women who kind of view them as a stepping stone away from straight relationships, actually.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Is that not something that you've seen in UK, or is this like a just completely US thing here?
I mean, I can't say I've ever seen it in the UK, but like you, like I met my partner at 23, I want to say, and haven't been looking since. And being bisexual, I feel like my dating experience was very 50-50 men and women. In my younger years, it was more men. In my older years, it was more women. But I always met women typically on online dating. So I never was really like on the scene or like in the clubs or anything like that. And we only actually have we have lots of gay bars in London, but we only have one dedicated lesbian bar.
Ooh, don't get me started on that. I think there is actually a project that looked up lesbian bars in the US, and there's something like only, I want to say it's like 13 to 20 lesbian bars in the US, but when you look, there's over 170 gay bars. And so it's like, why is there this disparity between that, which is a whole other thing?
The lesbian bar in London is quite literally like a tin bomb shelter. It's in the heart of Soho, but it is, I don't even know how to say it because our measurements are so different. I'll say like probably 30 feet length by maybe 15 feet wide. That's the entire club. It's a basement in Soho. The plus side is if you're a male queuing in the line to get in, the bouncer will ask the women ahead of you and behind you if they're comfortable with you being let in.
Weird.
It's one of their policies.
I mean, I can see it. I'm just shocked that they would let men in at all. Like,
period.
You're asking if somebody can vouch for you in the line, effectively.
Yeah, and you're not allowed to know them. They have to be like strangers.
Oh shit. So
yeah,
what's the point then? Just say no men allowed. Like,
but I feel like there's that pressure. Like I've been asked if I'm comfortable with a man ahead of me being let in, and he's like looking at me, and I'm like, well, I can't exactly say no.
But you can. But that also goes to another thing about how society puts that pressure on women, that we do have to cater to a man and try to make a man happy, despite the fact that that's ridiculous. And I think, society at large, I think the way that we treat women, I think everybody can agree that it's not the best. But I really hate kind of seeing how that societal pressure seems to be pervasive in our own community, where we're supposed to feel a little bit safer in our community and a little bit more comfortable. And I feel like, kind of taking it back to our topic, is like, I almost wonder if that's why we have a lack of masculine representation, is because of some of the thoughts around women and how women are supposed to, I hate to say, to be with a man, but like that's kind of what it feels like, is, you know, talking about compulsory heterosexuality and the default being you're assumed to be straight as default. Just the over sexualization of women and kind of trying to really put them into that box of you're supposed to cater to a man. And then it makes me wonder if that's part of the reason why feminine lesbians, I mean, there's always preferential, obviously, but like in our media that we're creating, why they're always pairing either a feminine woman with another feminine woman or a feminine woman with a masculine woman and not masculine.
Yeah. It's shocking after like looking into this topic how little there are.
Yeah. And I would really love to understand why, like, because one of our favorite authors, Lee Winter, I believe would fall into that category of more masculine or more butch presenting, but even she only has the one and her characters don't end up together. And so it does beg that question of what the fuck are we doing? Like, what is happening here exactly?
Yeah, and I feel like of all the Sapphic authors out there, why are there not more masc pairings?
Exactly. And then when we do have them, why do we have some toxic masculinity presented in it? Because I feel like thinking about, we've already kind of talked about where I would fall under what? Futch? Soft butch? I would probably fall on the more masculine side of the spectrum. Like, there are plenty of butch women out there who don't feed into that toxic masculinity.
Yeah, of course.
It almost makes me wonder, again, looking at societal pressures, if that's a thing where women pigeonhole themselves into that masculine box and then think that they have to try and be what they think it is that a man is, which is crazy when you're thinking about within a Sapphic community. We're obviously women. We're women who want to be with women. We don't have to try and be what a man thinks a man is.
Yeah, I think of so many masc examples in Sapphic literature where they're not like that. They are, you know, more in tune with their emotions, which goes against the typical stereotype of a butch. And I think there are so many great examples of that within a femme-masc pairing, but none within a masc pairing. Like, for example, if you think about, is it Denny from Right Woman, Wrong Number?
Wrong Number, yeah. I was actually going to bring that up because I love Denny.
Yeah, a butch woman, but she is just the most gentle, compassionate, kind, emotional woman you can imagine.
Exactly. She is well-adjusted. She's comfortable enough with like who she is that when she goes out into the world, like she's okay with presenting masculinely.
Yeah, it's the point where she makes her own clothes that are tailored in a more masculine fit.
Exactly. And so, like, Jay actually does a lot of really good masculine representation as far as her books are concerned. I think you might have read it with one of them's a comedian and the other is a bouncer.
Oh, the room arrangement.
Yeah, that one. Great book. Great book. The bouncer in that is definitely more on the masculine side, and she's great. Like, she doesn't give into toxic masculinity at all. She's extremely, like, soft with her roommate, and they're vulnerable, and it's great representation of a masculine woman, but you just don't see it in masculine pairings. It feels like there's a lot of toxicity, and the ones that I didn't find toxicity in were the novellas, because there was another novella that I could almost recommend, but it's, again, novella, and it goes very surface level with their relationship, but higher by Roz Alexander to butch presenting Jewish women. And that one almost starts a little, not quite enemies to lovers, but it's more they annoy each other. And so one of them really feeds into the fact that she annoys, and she just tries to needle at the other one and really get under her skin. But it's very clear that they both are attracted to one another, but, you know, they're fighting against it. I could recommend that one as well. But man, there were so many that I had seen where the masculine characters were like over sexualizing their partner or really objectifying their partner.
It's so disappointing.
It really is. I don't want to call any of those ones out specifically, but there were some that really, like, that is where the draw was, is it was talking about her rack. And I'm like, ugh, that's gross. Like, you're not talking about how you feel about her as a human being. And I'm not saying that lesbians can't objectify other women. Obviously, there are lesbians out there who do. That's not to say like we're perfect or anything, but it really bums me out to see it so pervasively within that pairing, because I don't think we see it as frequently within other pairings within Sapphic literature.
No, for sure. When I think of all the masc femme pairings, the masc is more of an ice queen, perhaps, but they're never presented as toxic.
No, outside of those pairings, I don't think I've seen a masc in others that were toxic. Can you think of anyone that was toxic inside of like a masc femme pairing?
I think so. I'm just trying to think of all the ones I've read recently. I read Loser of the Year, but that wasn't toxic at all, but that was masc femme. I did read another of Anita Kelly's books, the one with the basketball coach.
How You Get the Girl?
That's the one. And that's kind of like I don't know how you would describe that pairing. I'd say that's kind of like masc futch.
Okay.
The femme pairing in that, the femme woman in that, or like femme, I wouldn't say she's more of like a tomboy.
Okay.
But yeah, no, that wasn't, even the masc in that wasn't toxic. It just seems to be when it's a masc pairing that the toxicity comes out.
Yeah. And maybe that's credit to Anita Kelly there. Maybe Anita Kelly, I need to read more of her stuff to see less toxic masc pairings. But it's just one of those where when you think about it, like if somebody asks, hey, I would love to read a romance novel with Sapphic pairings, you get this whole list of great books, but almost none of them that I've seen in Reddits were masc pairings.
Yeah, and I'm sure it must suck if you are a masc or a butch woman and you don't see yourself represented either fairly, or if you are a masc attracted to another masc, you don't see your relationship represented fairly.
Yeah, I think that's really disheartening. Just because if you think about it, I feel like a lot of Sapphic authors write about, Sapphic relationships, because in mainstream media, we don't really get to see Sapphic relationships that much. And we 100% almost, I can't think of a single butch femme pairing even in like mainstream media that you see. And so like you would think, okay, here would be a perfect time for us to write masc or something that represents a lot of relationships out there, and we just don't see it.
Yeah, the only one I can think of is Gentleman Jack in mainstream media. But even then, I wouldn't say Anne Lancaster, the butch woman. She only presents as butch because she's single, she's lesbian, she's like runs her own business, and obviously during the time that was never done. And she wears suits as opposed to dresses, but she's still very feminine features.
If I think about it, I haven't read the book. I saw the miniseries. Tipping the Velvet, I think, does have a more masculine presenting character, but it's one of those again where, I mean, if I recall correctly, she was kind of toxic, though, the masculine character. And this show got canceled, so this is going to be controversial. I think they were Hollywood, quote unquote, masculine. But if you think about Willow, the series, the two characters there, Jade and Kit, one is training to be a knight, and one is the princess, and she's going to be paired off with a prince from a different kingdom. But all she wants to do is be an adventurer, to have her own say in who she loves and everything. And you question, like, she's got short hair, so I feel like it's Hollywood masculine. And she is really good with a sword. It's still not explicitly a masculine pairing because the actresses are so very feminine themselves, and it's never really presented as masculine. Actually, though, that does bring up a good point. I saw a lot of, in fantasy, it seemed like authors were more willing to really embrace masculine pairings. And I don't know if it's just because it's not like, a lot of times it's not explicitly stated that they are masculine or masculine presenting, but I think it is because of the fact that you can have more women who are heroes or women who are villains, like those archetypes. And so we assume hero equals masculine. And so I almost wonder if part of that is just because of what our assumptions are going into a fantasy novel, and not necessarily because it was something that was really considered and thoughtfully put out there for that reason.
Yeah, it definitely falls into the archetype of, like you said, male or male characteristics hero.
Exactly.
Damn, we need to find a good masc Sapphic romance.
Yeah. Like I said, I found quite a few, and I did read as many as I could. I can call out a few of them, but boy, I don't know if I would recommend a lot of them. Like I said, Stud Like Her, good book. It brings up a lot of good topics. I would recommend it for sure, but there are aspects of it that I think, as far as the narrative is considered, it could have been cleaned up a little bit more, and it does lean into a little bit of toxicity as far as like toxic masculinity. Shattered, great book, not really a romance, and it does end with, you know, what one could consider not a happy ending necessarily. Both characters find, you know, love, but it's not with each other, and so it doesn't end true to the masc. Roz Alexander, higher. It's a novella, still cute. Wherever Is Your Heart, Anita Kelly novella, super fucking cute. I want the whole story. I do.
You should DM her, see if she's willing to write a follow-up.
That would be great. I would read the fuck out of that. And then one other one that I had read, the spice level on Complex Dimensions by Brenda Murphy, was pretty high. I didn't love it because, honestly, one of the masculine characters to me, I think she's meant to be portrayed as an ice queen. And we've kind of talked about it, that there's a toxicity level where there's that line between abusive and ice queen, and I think she's on the wrong side of that line. I honestly think she's abusive. It is part of like a whole other like literary universe. I think there's 5 books in the series, and each one focuses on different characters within the universe, but that one's an interesting premise from kind of, I would hesitate to say it's a brothel, but it kind of is. It's a house of pleasure. I don't know a good way to say that, but that's kind of the premise. Is this woman is hired to tend to the horses on this estate, and it is a place where women can come and purchase the company of another woman.
You should have just left it as a place where women can come.
It's a workplace where women can come. But no, one of them is hired to be the horse keeper person, stable keeper, and the other one is like a chauffeur, basically. Like, she is who drives people to the place and kind of takes them around town, or if they want to role play in any sorts of way, she helps to set the stage for a lot of that. And so spice levels, as you could imagine, extremely high on this one. I actually got kind of uncomfortable with how high that spice level was.
Wow.
It was, you know, if your rankings are, you know, like bell pepper to ghost pepper, it was probably closer to the ghost pepper side.
Interesting.
It does play a lot with, we kind of talked a little bit about BDSM. There is a lot of that power dynamic going on, and really talks about tops and bottoms a lot. But
oh, is that the one you were telling me about where they both refused to be top? They were both bottoms?
No, this one actually, that one was higher, where they both found out that they were both tops. And they had that moment where they were like, wait, are you trying to top me? And she's like, yeah, what are you trying to do? And she's like, I'm also trying to top you. That wasn't that one. That was a funny scene, though. And actually also brought up the question of, I don't see that ever in other Sapphic romances where it's got 2 tops meeting each other dynamic.
It's funny. There should be more common.
Yeah, or 2 bottoms. I've never found that one pop up either, where neither of them want to be the top.
I'm literally just imagine them both lying on the bed next to each other like, are you going to move first? I'm not moving first.
No, this one is predominantly a top and one is like a stone top. But this is where I say all of these books, even if I wouldn't recommend all of them, they all do have like interesting points that I saw brought up. In this one, she said she was always a top because that was what the expectation was of her. Since she is a more masculine woman, everybody just assumed she was a top. And so when she meets this other masculine woman, this woman is actually a top, like borders on stone top. I can think of maybe one incident where they actually had switched, but she said that everybody just assumed she was a top. So no, it ended up being top bottom, but it was an interesting point she brought up about, again, assuming that just because you are a more masculine presenting, that you would be a top. And it goes back to that question of, in our own community, why are we pigeonholing people into things that kind of fall into that like heteronormative space?
Okay, I need you to write a good masc book.
I'm not the author, you know that. I'm the editor. If you write, like, give me a baseline where you wrote it, and then I'll like ghostwrite partially.
We can be co-authors.
There you go. Boom.
See, this is great because I'll do the skeleton bit and then you can do the editing bit.
I like it. But yeah, it's interesting. I don't know. I did find that slightly disheartening, though, that in a few of these, the top did seem to really objectify the bottom. Is kind of gross. That just bummed me out to think, like, why we're doing that within our own community.
The masks deserve better.
Exactly. Masc representation. Let's make it happen, people.
Hopefully an author has seen this, and maybe it's an author that was considering doing a masc pairing.
I'm definitely hoping that there ends up being more masc representation out there. And I mean, admittedly, it brings up the question of consumerism too, because me personally, despite being more on the masculine spectrum, it's not something I'm looking for. I tend to read more femme pairings. I've read a few masculine femme pairings before, but it just seems like most of what I consume is femme. And it does bring up that question of, well, are we having authors writing femme or femme masc pairings because that's more what people want and we're catering to that consumerism? Or is it just that nobody has those stories out there to tell? And I'm sure there are those stories out there to tell, but if we're leaning into that consumerism, aren't we doing kind of what mainstream media is doing to us, where they're also not giving us representation because they think that's not what people want to see?
I feel like if you had the top tier household name Sapphic authors like Kaylee Cass or Monica McCallan or J.J. Arias, all of these well-known Sapphic authors, if they wrote a masc pairing, I've no doubt that they would still be bought and still be consumed.
100%. I wouldn't even think about it.
If one of my favourite authors is writing a masc pairing, regardless of whether it's my preference, I'm still going to buy it and devour it.
Yeah, exactly. But then, I mean, that brings up the whole question of, would they feel comfortable writing a masc from the perspective of, I mean, I hate labeling somebody else. I know I did it previously with Lee Winters, but like, truly, would they consider themselves masculine? Probably not. Terrible assumption on my part. I apologize to everybody who's judging me right now for that, but like, do they feel like they are the right person to write that story?
I get that completely. You write what you know. And I think I would struggle to write a masc character purely because I don't have any friends that are masc. I don't know any masks in real life. I'm not masc myself. And it's kind of like, you don't want to do them a disservice and you don't want to not do them justice by writing them incorrectly.
Is that why you're going to say I should write one?
No, I'm going to say this is why you should edit one that I've written the bones for.
There you go. I'll be your sensitivity reader. I definitely want to see more masculine representation with less toxicity. This is another one where I will just tell our listeners right now, if you found one out there that I haven't read on the list of 13, I would definitely be down to hear some. That's for sure. Just because I feel like I had a hard time with this assignment, as I'll call it. I looked through so many Reddit posts. I looked through, like, not just me, but there are a lot of people out there who do make spreadsheets. And so a lot of like blogs had spreadsheets where you could filter through based on pairing type, and I just couldn't find them. So of like 13, I read 8. So, I mean, I tried to read all of them I could. Some of them were in series, so I didn't want to read like outside of series to see if I missed context. But yeah, so if anybody out there knows in listener land of a masculine pairing that I completely overlooked or something that's good to read, I'd love to hear it.
Yeah, me too.
Except you didn't read any of them with me.
Because you moaned about 99% of them.
That's not fair. I'd say more like 75%.
The one you did tell me to read, Anita Kelly one, is on my TBR.
There you go.
I am going to read the one of them that you recommended.
I would say you could read Stud Like Her, but I know how you feel about certain language, and I feel like that one might not be up your alley just from the language perspective.
I am a sensitive reader.
That would be the infamous Pussy Waffle one.
Well, you're going to need to tell the listeners about Pussy Waffle.
I don't want to, because it feels like I'm talking negatively about it. It was funny within the context, but it did kind of take me out of the moment just a little bit. And again, kind of made me wonder about toxic masculinity. Because, okay, so our characters, Chance and Garrett, go on a date. They'd go to an ice cream shop, and, you know, when you go into an ice cream shop, I don't know about in the UK, but in the US, you can actually have places that make homemade, like, waffle cones or waffle bowls. So at this place, their whole shtick was that they made the waffle in the shape of a pussy. And so that was, like, the whole thing. Like, they continuously referenced it and talked about the pussy waffle cone and how they were like licking that sweet cream out of it. And I was like, I don't know if I can do this. This scene is really hard to take seriously because of that. And it's one of those where I'm like, hey, from a writer's perspective, I get it. It's funny. And, you know, if you're trying to be a little tongue in cheek, definitely like throw it out there. But where I come at it from like an editor's point of view is I would have questioned for the author, is the joke or is the tongue-in-cheek reference worth taking your reader out of like the seriousness of their relationship? And I didn't feel like the narrative needed that. But again, like, this is why I'm an editor, not an author. Like, maybe the author thought it was something to help break up like the seriousness of some of the topics that were coming out, because it is a fairly serious book as far as that all is concerned, because it almost mirrors like coming to terms with your sexuality, but they do it in such a way where she's coming to terms with her liking other masculine women. But I do feel like there's a good parallel between where you're like coming out and understanding, hey, I do like other women, and oh, hey, I do, and I'm coming to terms with the fact that I like other masculine women. So I read the parallelism there, and I really appreciated it as a topic. But again, that scene, it was enough for me to almost not want to recommend it, because I knew for you, especially, like, or some other readers out there might not like it just because of that scene, which is, it's sad, because it's an important story. It's a really good story. I think what Fiona Zed, I hope I'm saying her name right, Fiona Zed did with that story is really an interesting exploration of that culture and everything, you know?
That's like such a depressing note to end the podcast on.
Fine, if you don't want to end on a down note, masculine authors out there, can you please write us more Masc stories like Wherever Is Your Heart, where it is fluffy and mature and both characters are okay with their preference.
And not toxic.
Exactly, not toxic. And listeners, if you have any masc pairing recommendations, I really want to hear them, because I got really, really bogged down in this reading assignment.
And I'm going to have to set you a fun one next.
Okay, well, that was our masc episode. So if you guys liked it, if you hated it, let us know in the comments. Hopefully you enjoyed it and took something away from it. Feel free to like and subscribe, follow us on all of our socials, all that good stuff. Thanks for joining us, and hopefully you come back next time.